Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, Season 7, PrisonerChatz. My name is Magellan, and by the time I finish with him, he won't know whether he's Alan or the cube root of infinity. It's Alan.
Whoa. The what? The what?
The cube root of infinity?
Cubrid?
Cube root.
Cube root. Okay. Oh,
Cube
right.
Root. It's a numbers. It's funnier because he's number 6.
Am I number Alan or am I number?
You're number Alan.
Thank you. Hi, hello, welcome to the show.
Welcome. You're welcome to the show.
Oh, what can I say except you're welcome to my podcast? It's Prisoner Chats. It's the show where we talk about how we're in prison for crimes, unspeakable crimes. If you were to go to prison right now, what would it be for? That's such a stupid question. Don't answer that. Don't out yourself. Unless you want to.
What do you want me to say?
You got any crimes?
I don't know. Probably.
Remember that Chats nights? No. I'm specifically thinking of the Chats nights where we were like, "Have you ever done a crime or something?" And I was like, "I'm not asking this."
I don't know. Probably embezzling. That sounds good.
Embezzle, because it's fun to say, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I would never embezzle, but what I would do is talk with my good friend about the TV show The Prisoner. This week we watched episode 5 of The Prisoner, which is called The Schizoid Man, as well as episode 6, The General. The General. That's hard to say.
The General.
Because I think they say general in the show because they're all British. First up is The Schizoid Man, which, by the way, I think you had Googled this. Does the term schizoid have like negative or ableist connotation?
So, yeah, let's get into the written and directed, and then I'll give you the definition that I found.
Perfect. So, The Schizoid Man was written by Terrence Feely, directed by Pat Jackson. It originally aired October 27th, 1967. And Magellan, what happened in The Schizoid Man? In
this episode, number 6 wakes up with a new identity. Now he's number 12. Worse. I forgot how good this is. Sorry.
Yeah. I embellished it a little bit from the description, but...
Okay. Number 6 wakes up with a new identity. Now he's number 12. Worse, number 2 asks him to impersonate someone, number 6. But the new number 6 is more like him than he is.
What a situation we find ourselves in.
Once you've seen the episode, that makes complete sense.
That makes perfect sense. It's like, yeah, obviously, duh.
Yeah, there's no other way you could have explained
Number
it.
6 is impersonated by number 12, but he thinks he's 6 because number 12 is better at being 6 than he is. That's it.
Yeah.
It's about identity, folks, and it's called The Schizoid Man. So, Magellan, hit me with the definition of schizoid, please, before I continue to feel weird about saying this word.
So I looked it up, and schizoid... So first of all, I've heard the term before listening to the Super Ego podcast, if anybody's listened to that, the like sketch comedy podcast, because they sort of frame it as if they're doing like psychological case studies of the weird characters that they do.
Ooh.
And they'll say like narcissistic personality disorder. And sometimes they say schizoid personality disorder.
Okay.
And schizoid personality disorder is defined. I'm going to the Mayo Clinic website.
Okay. Whoa. I used to work for the company that helped out the Mayo Clinic. Fun fact.
I've used to spread mayo on my sandwiches.
Before the dark times.
Before I only do hot mustard on tortillas with salami on them.
Yes, that looked so good.
You didn't see me do that. That was a tragic thing that I did yesterday.
Oh, I thought the one you sent me the image of with the tacos. I thought that's what.
No, though that was like a dish that I prepared yesterday.
Oh.
I was like, "What do I have that I can eat? I'll take these cold tortillas and just drizzle spicy mustard on them and put salami on top and wrap it up and eat that."
Okay, there's protein in there at least. I forgot.
Yeah. No vegetables though. Nothing. No cheese. Nothing good. Okay, so the schizoid personality disorder, sorry.
Okay.
Schizoid personality disorder is an uncommon condition in which people avoid social activities and consistently shy away from interaction with others. They also have a limited range of emotional expression. If you have schizoid personality disorder, you may be seen as a loner or dismissive of others, and you may lack the desire or skill to form close personal relationships. Because you don't tend to show emotion, you may appear as though you don't care about others or what's going on around you. The cause of schizoid personality disorder is unknown. Talk therapy and in some cases medications can help. So
that's from the Mayo Clinic?
That's the Mayo Clinic website. It does feel like it's an out-of-date term, though, right?
Yes.
Like, maybe the Wikipedia page can give us some insight into whether or not people still use this.
There is actually totally a Wikipedia page called List of Disability-Related Terms with Negative Connotation.
Okay, is schizoid in there?
Yes, it is.
Hit me with that.
Schizo, especially as an adjective, meaning erratic or unpredictable, or for the former to refer to an individual, is considered one of these. Wow, this is an interesting. We're not gonna dig too far into this, but it's worth mentioning that that's a term that has different connotation than it did at the time of the episode. I was also fascinated by how it looped back around to being how it fit into the episode.
Yeah, now knowing that definition, I don't really get what they like. Are they trying to create that disorder for number 6 in this? You know,
right?
Why is that kind of, because the way it comes up? First of all, it's the title, and then once number 6 is able to like crack the code of what's going on, and he not tortures, but he like beats up his adversary in this episode, his doppelganger, and then asks for the password, and the password is Schizoid Man.
Yeah, maybe it's supposed to be that they're saying that he is a schizoid man in a way, because he's the one who doesn't get along with people, like number 6 is. Yeah,
but it does show. So I guess we can start at the beginning of the episode with his interactions with what was her name or her number?
The person with the mind reader?
Yeah.
Allison.
She had a name?
Yeah, they only said it very briefly at the end. I think like number 2 was like, oh, you got to go back to Allison.
Wasn't he talking about the guy's wife?
No, that's Susan.
Okay. Yeah, so he's hanging out with this lady Allison, who's sort of got like a Where's Waldo look. I love the beachy 60s costumes that everybody wears on the island. It's very fun. And she's like reading his mind, and it's just this like kind of nice intimate scene where they are showing that they have this psychic link, and you're like, who is this lady? Is she like another person who's trying to get stuff out of him? I don't really.
Yeah, we don't see like any sort of introduction to this relationship. It's just like, yep, Allison and number 6 like hang out together. She comes to his house, she tests her mind reading games on him, and he likes to play along because she's friendly enough, I guess, is all we need to know.
And but it's strange because we never see him like making friends, really.
Right. He just happens to know this person. It's like
he's like
one of those things where you kind of have to fill in the blanks of like, okay, I eventually in a village like with a fairly sociable person like number 6, surrounded by people, some of whom are around his age, he could just make friends through talking to people day to day, you know?
And he's kind of let his guard down a little bit. I mean,
yeah,
this sort of, in this episode, I was really thinking about what we talked about last week with regard to the AV Club viewing order and how they sort of constructed their viewing order around like number 6's arc as a character and his
comfort in the village.
Yeah. Right, yeah. His arc being centered on like how comfortable he is. And this episode, I think it's a really hard one to triangulate in that sense because he seems really comfortable at the beginning when he's hanging out with Allison and they're like playing set or whatever they're doing. It's a shout out to people who've played set before.
Good game, I made
it. Yeah. So he seems really comfortable in that context, and she's like taking Polaroid pictures of him with bruises on his finger. It's like this is really sort of pastoral and charming. But then the plot really gets to him, and he seems totally thrown for a loop throughout the whole episode after that.
I do agree. I mean, the plot like overtakes his whole situation in this episode, of course, like the introduction of number 12 becoming number 6 and the indoctrination and all that stuff. But maybe it's because in hindsight we know that a lot of the details of that first scene end up being used against number 6. But that was like the underlying sinister feel that I got from it, where it's like, this is a friend, I guess, but nobody's really his friend on this island. So is she working for someone? Is this like a bigger plot to like get him to say something to her? Like, why would he make friends with someone if he knows that everybody's eventually going to try and get information out of him? All that. But yeah, we eventually find out that she's entering into all these different contests, like photography and mind reading and all this stuff for another one of the big like village games. And he like leaves he tells her to leave, and he goes to sleep, and number 2 is watching. We get a very handsome young looking number 2 this week. And he's like, I want to deepen his sleep. He's not asleep deeply enough. So a bunch of men just like walk into number 6's bedroom and like make his lights flicker
They
so he
sing
stays
him a
asleep.
lullaby. They read him a bedtime story.
Yeah, they make him like a warm blanket and some milk, and it's great. And they drag him out of bed, and we see the clock, and it says that it's Wednesday, February 10th. So I was paying attention to the date because one of the ways that they kind of fuck with 6's brain is that they're changing what date. He doesn't like know what day it is because they keep flipping it every time he gets up. So it goes from the 10th to the 11th, and I think back to the 10th at the end of the episode, which is interesting. And they do a couple of tests on him. The only ones that we see early on is that they test his handedness. They see that he's left-handed. And they mess with his clock so that he doesn't know what time it is or when it is.
Yeah.
And he wakes up that morning and he just has a mustache. Like a big, floofy, beautiful 1960s ass mustache.
Yeah.
And he rocks it really well, which is messed up. Because you close your eyes and think of number 6, he's got that perfectly clean-shaven rockin' chin and everything.
Yeah, right.
And it turns out he can rock a mustache like it's nobody's business. But when he gets up, everybody starts calling him number 12. He has different neighbors. There's like a weird Indian man with a turban, I guess, it's like, who's like, hello, number 6. Or number 12, rather. And so in my notes, one of the things I did to like help alleviate the confusion, and this completely bit me in the ass later, was I referred to the two people as black jacket and white jacket.
Yeah.
Or black coat and white coat, which I owned myself there because he changes jackets at the end. Basically, he meets number 2, who's like, hey, what's up, number 12? You're doing so great. I need you to do this thing where you're going to impersonate the prisoner. His name is number 6, and you guys look alike. Make sure you use your...
freaking out.
It's cool because he's like, and what they do, the sort of like gist of their plan is they keep making him fit. They tell him that number 6, these are like his traits. You know, he smokes his cigarettes this way. He's right-handed, and he shoots with his right hand. He talks. He catches with his right hand. You need to be right-handed, right? Like that's how you're gonna do it. He's like, but I'm number 6. And they're like, no, you're number 12, but good job. You're doing a really good job impersonating number 6. You're doing great.
It's like, oh, you're so good at this.
I love the slow like build-up of annoyance in number 2, where by the end, when 6 is still doing this, and he's like, but I'm number 6, and he's like, you really don't get off the job for 5 minutes, do you weirdo? Can you just be normal and be number 12, which is who you are?
The thing that's so, just to skip ahead a little bit, the thing that's so... I don't know what the word even is, but just sadistic about what they're doing to number 6 is that they are the things that are making him impersonate, like being right-handed or smoking a certain kind of whatever, are like actually the things that are true about him.
Right.
And they just conditioned him away from those things. So he doesn't even know, like, okay, this is actually me and I'm putting on a disguise. Because now what he thinks is the disguise is actually how he is, and the thing that he thinks is true to him is actually something that was given to him. It's just so, my God.
It's deliberately very, very confusing.
Yeah,
but,
for the viewer too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because throughout the episode, you're thinking, wait, was the test at the beginning real, where he swatted away the electric prod with his left hand? So the real 6 is left-handed, but he's being told he's right-handed, but he's being told to pretend he's right. And what it actually is that, what they didn't tell him is that they conditioned him to flip all of his things and then are telling him to act what is true to himself in a way that makes him feel like he's being artificial no matter what. So he can't possibly be more accurate than the number 12 who's impersonating him.
Right.
And he's given a password to differentiate him from the real number 6, which is Gemini, at this point at least.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to his house, and the other number 6 walks in, the white coat, who is like, "Hey, it's me, number 6. Hi, how's it going?" And he's like, "Wait, what?" And they do the Spider-Man pointing at himself meme.
Any sense, as soon as he sees the other number 6, any sense of like stability or clarity or identity completely dissipates.
Right.
Like he's just like, he's totally drained and unmoored by that moment. You can see in his face the light like totally leaves his eyes, and any sense of self is like, it dissipates, it's gone.
Right, which is exactly what they're trying to do, is get him to forget who he is and like submit to the impersonation. White Coat suggests that Black Coat and him attempt to see who's the real number 6 with some classic tests, like a shooting accuracy test. And they get these big chunky pistols, and they go into the shooting gallery, and he does the whole like, why are you shooting with your left hand if the real number 6 is obviously right-handed, which is clever. And then because that means that his accuracy is going to be garbage, he's going to be like, you're not 90% accurate. The real number 6 is 90% accurate. They get into a boxing match outside, and they like beat each other up, which is cute. This is the moment where we saw the Rover, and I was actually really excited, like, oh, hey, there you are, bud. How's it going?
Why aren't they using you in every episode?
We miss you. This is also, I found some trivia about this. This is the first episode where it's called the Rover. Before they never referred to it. It's at the end of this episode, when he thinks that he got it to kill Curtis. He's like,
the Rover killed number 6 or whatever.
Yes, yeah, and then he's like, turn off the Rover and all that stuff, which is great that they just can be like, bloop, off, no more Rover, gone.
It's weird that the Rover was like on kill mode because it hasn't killed before.
Right. I thought it was just in like cartoon suffocation mode.
Yeah.
Which I think but is it? Because did Curtis die?
I don't know. That I guess so, right? I guess he did.
We'll chomp into it a little more. We actually, I guess we don't see him again, but maybe the implication is that number 6 thought that he successfully killed Curtis, but when he leaves, obviously, and comes back, he's like, oh no, none of this was real. I thought he was killed, but maybe not. So we don't actually know, I think.
Yeah, I think we can kind of go out of order a little bit here, but when it gets to that end sequence where number 6 has, in his mind, he's killed the imposter, his doppelganger, Curtis, white coat jacket guy. He thinks that he's killed him and is now impersonating him. He's talking to number 2, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm getting out of here. And I love how like slow number 2 is on the uptake, because you see him have a moment where he's like, wait, no, it couldn't be. No, he couldn't be doing that.
No,
and then they're in the car, and number 6 is like, yeah, I got to go report to the general. And number 2 is like, you got to and it's number 6 like, I didn't mean it. Come on, man. You know what I meant,
like, send him a report.
Duh. We're both evil here. We know what I'm talking about. And then the gotcha moment is number 2 is like, say hi to Susan for me. And number 6 says, yeah, I totally will. And they put the blindfold on him and fly the helicopter and land it back down. And number 2 says, Susan's dead, dude.
She's been dead for a year.
Yeah. The thing about that ending is I sort of wanted it to be part of the plan that they knew that he was going to catch on. You know?
Oh, sure. Like, this is not him getting close, but actually, like, they really had this all planned out from even him sort of finding out.
Yeah, like, and it feels, I don't know, this episode kind of gives you, it sort of undermines, I think, 2 things about the prisoner, or maybe it just brings them to reality in a way that I don't know how I feel about it. Because what you're saying about Curtis being dead or not, in the version that I would have preferred, I think he would walk up at the end and be like, "You didn't kill me, dude. Like we rovers don't kill. We were onto you. It was part of the plan." Um, and instead, this episode seems to be saying like it's actually totally possible for Six to escape, and he
Right.
almost did it. He just slipped a little bit, but he could have been out of there, and it would have been fine. And,
well, he's learning a little bit too, which is why why I liked that part where he like kind of almost figures it out. They're not an infallible system. We already know, like from A, B, and C and stuff, that they're the village and the people trying to get info out of him aren't perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So they come like 75% of the way there, and then they stagger, which also happens in the second episode.
Yeah.
I think both of these episodes show that like number 6 is developing a sort of awareness for when the scales are supposed to fall from his eyes, and he's ready to like get ready for that.
Yeah.
He's ready to counter that.
Yeah. So I guess I'm torn about like whether or not I want it to be possible for him to like outwit everybody to escape, because I think that makes it feel a little too much like it's in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of like this show as like, what if he's dead and this is just like he's dead. I kind of like it as a sort of metaphorical or allegorical construct as opposed to like a real island in a real place that he could really escape.
Yeah, I gave you my theory yesterday, I believe.
Yeah, let's say our theories.
We have theories now. Mine is specifically that we're going for like a most dangerous game sort of thing, and that this is all some sort of contest or game show to test number 6, probably by his agency. But that's my thought right now, is that he's the only agent, and it's a contest, and he's presumably doing really well so far. It's like, maybe can you get off the island? Can you develop your individuality?
And so it's like this is the spy training kind of thing.
Right. If you succeed in this, then you're a good spy.
I like that more than my theory. My theory is based on at the beginning of the episode, during the like opening sequence, one of the questions he asks is, which side are you on?
Oh, right.
And they're like, that would be telling, which is interesting because that implies that there are sides instead of him being like, who are you?
Right.
Because you'd think he'd be like, who are you? Who do you work for or something? But instead he's like, whose side are you on? Which makes me think, is he talking about like the Cold War sides? Is he talking about like he's on one side and the world is against him or whatever? And so that made me think that like, well, what if actually this is like a bunch of Russians?
Yeah.
And they're trying to get info from him, and they're just Russians who are all doing British accents.
Well, and so much of the show has like referenced sides and betrayal and the Cold War and like all of that. So, there's definitely more than a little bit of evidence for that. I wouldn't be like floored if that was it. Because that makes a lot of sense. But I think the contest thing specifically explains why like everybody's in on it in a fun way.
Yeah.
And why they are always like letting him taste freedom before taking it from him. Like, that's the whole thing about the prisoners. He always almost gets out. He doesn't just like fail miserably. We're not watching a character like try and fail to succeed. We're watching a character try and like taste success and have it on like the very tip of his lips, and then just have it completely yanked from under him to kind of like wear him down.
Yeah.
And it's a contest to see like, can he like survive, endure that, basically.
Yeah. The other thing that it was sort of undermining or making me feel like this island is more real than I would like it to be.
Yeah.
So really my theory isn't that there are a bunch of Russians. I just think that's possible. My theory is that it's like I don't know, just sort of some sort of metaphysical construct.
Like in Lost?
Like it's Lost. It's basically Lost. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that undermined it was like the fact that it seems like his friend Allison had agency and made choices and like sold him out purposefully, because there's a scene where he brings her in to talk to number 2 and Curtis, And it's like, come on, yeah, we can prove who the real one is. You'll be able to read my mind and not his mind. And then she can't read the real guy's mind, and she reads the other guy's mind. And then when he goes to see her at the end, he's like, oh yeah, 6 is dead, totally dead. But the way that he says it, you can tell that she knows he's the real guy and he's going to escape. And then at the helicopter pad, she's like, yeah, I wish I could have done it differently, and like would have said sorry or whatever she said. She essentially apologizes to him. And so then it's like, okay, so is she also trapped on the island and she like cut a deal with someone? It kind of gets at that same stuff from episode 1 that we were talking about, of like the guy who pretended to be dead and then he got to leave because of it, and the woman fell in love with him. Are other people on this island real?
Is anybody real?
Because
Is number 6 real?
I like it when it's just number 6 and it's like an island of people who are employed to fuck with him. And when it's like a island full of
people trying to get out.
Full of spies trying to get out. That's a cool show too, but then that's a different show. Then that's like an HBO drama.
Right.
Instead of this like trippy, literary experience.
And that can fit into my theory as well, that it's a contest that's like the first person to get off wins. Or like people like, and there's a bunch of contestants and anyone who gets off gets to leave, but like it's not all of them or something. There's a lot of options here. But in terms of this episode, what I think works is, like you said, Allison not being explicitly a betrayer, and the fact that we really are meant to lose track of which one is number 6 and which one is Curtis.
Yeah.
Because what we learn after the Allison scene where she tries to like do the cards thing, but it only goes well with Whitecoat, is after that we see the flashback of what really happened, and that's that number 6 was programmed in his sleep via like mind control, brain wiping training to do all of the things and change all of his habits to be those of Curtis and not himself, like flipping everything, so that he thinks that that's normal consciously and doesn't realize he's subconsciously been manipulated. And so he goes to, or Black Coat goes to White Coat to vent about this and is like, hey man, like, I'm not sure if I'm me anymore, but one of us lives here. I don't know what's going on. Just kidding. I totally know what's going on. It's me. And he like, they fight a little bit, and then White Coat reveals that his name is Curtis. And he's like, the password is actually not Gemini. It's Schizoid Man. And he tries it on the rover and it doesn't work. And then the person, like Black Coat, gets yomped by the rover. Curtis calls to say that the rover killed number 6. And you're like, wait, who's dead right now? I don't understand. Why is someone dead? He calls and it's like, wait, actually, no, Curtis was the real number 6. And specifically to make fun of me for calling them White Coat and Black Coat, he puts on the other jacket. And he's like, dumb, you knew number 2, you idiot. I knew all along that I was being manipulated. I'm number 6, the character who's the protagonist. And a great subtle moment, Allison comes back to his house and is talking to him about like, man, we got number 6. He's like, yeah, we did. And then she pulls out a cigarette and he turns around really quickly and lights it in the way that the real number 6 does. Yeah. Tuning her in like, I gotcha. And she goes away, and he still thinks that he has the gag down. So he puts this photo of Susan in his like suit pocket to go with number 2, and completely falls for it. Like just whiffs it hard in the last part of them, like in the midnight hour. Because number 2 is like, yeah, what we do is we put blindfolds on, right? Safety. That's what we do here. Number Curtis, number Curtis. It was we put blindfolds on when we get on the plane. He's like, okay, that's what I would do as Curtis. And he puts it on and they do. I don't trust helicopters on this show anymore, honestly.
No.
No helicopter is to be trusted because he gets turned around and captured. And Susan died a year ago and he was caught long ago. Close episode. Oh, delicious stuff. Just some of the most satisfying action.
It's awesome. I mean, the best scenes... They actually do an okay job, I think, of filming.
Yeah, I was going to talk about
Curtis
that,
fighting each other. At first, when they're boxing in front of the building, and it's like, are you a Orthodox or a Southpaw or whatever? That didn't look so good. But when they're doing the fight in like Curtis's kitchen, I thought that was not bad.
Yeah, I guess that's just composite shots, right? Like they just filmed him twice.
Well, yeah, it's composite shots when he's like talking to himself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When he's fighting himself, they're either just doing like close-up shots or they're using a body double.
A stunt double, yeah.
Yeah. But I thought those composite shots where he's talking to Curtis were really good too. And Patrick McGoohan is doing fun, subtle things with like making Curtis a different character than number 6.
Mm-hmm.
He's just so douchey, and his accent is like a little more British, a little more posh.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
He's like, yes, old boy, welcome to my house, or whatever. He's like really hamming it up. But he's not hamming it up like to an absurd degree. He's just turned up the dial a little bit. And you can kind of feel the contempt in this guy for number 6, that he's like kind of mocking him as he's playing him.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I thought that Patrick McGoohan did a really fun job with that.
I mean, imagine being Pat Jackson and being like, all right, Mr. McGoohan, I need you to play yourself, impersonating yourself, but you're also being indoctrinated to not be yourself. Go.
Right, yeah. Like, the role, like both the characters that he's playing, that's true, are people who are playing somebody else.
Right.
In several layers.
So he's also a person playing someone else. So it's just like a extremely difficult acting challenge, but he pulls it off really well.
Yeah.
I think it's a smart decision that the thing that they like transfer is stuff like we said, handedness and preference for cigarettes, because if it was like an accent, then it would key us in a lot sooner, like who is who. But
true,
having it be like unconscious things or not like immediately obvious things makes it like the game is figuring out who's the real one.
Yeah.
Do you have any stray notes on this episode though?
I do have some stray notes. Let's see. So the prisoner intro is very long. It's perfect sandwich making time.
It's like 3.5 minutes if you include all of the.
That's your snack time right there. So it's nice that's
perfect. Yeah.
Let's see. For some reason, I wrote in my notes, Patrick McGoohan has certainly had a lot of sex, right?
Wow, he's handsome.
Yeah, he's a handsome guy, but he's got like a perfect weird vibe. His eyebrows are so weird. Mm-hmm. He's always doing like a kind of face. I was a big fan of the mustache, and I loved the line where number 2 is like, "You've got a physical advantage over him," and then number 6 just yells, "Physical advantage of growing a mustache overnight."
Most of us wish we could do that. He also has, when they're doing the full indoctrination scene later, like he grows a full beard.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. We only get, that's very brief, but it's exciting to see Patty McGee with a full beard.
It's a nice look. They do the classic like old TV thing of showing something's creepy by having a little person butler.
Yep.
It's like, okay.
That guy's been around for a while. I like him.
Yeah.
He's I think he's in every episode. I was commenting on him at first, but then he falls so easily into the background.
I haven't seen him, or I haven't noticed him before.
He's always, whenever they like serve food, he's around. He's the guy that hangs out with number 2. But I think that works, that he's just like unconsciously there. Yeah. The little person, this small man that like serves him and does stuff.
Something I noticed about thinking about the theme of the show being like identity and individuality. First of all, it's funny when he wakes up as number 12 and you can see people being like, "Hey, number 12," and he wants to be like, "I'm not number 12. I'm not number 6 either. I'm a man. I'm not a number." But he like has developed an attachment to the number, right? Like that's his name. And so I think the mind gamiest part of this is just getting him, even if they're not like winning over him in this episode, they're forcing him to build more of an attachment to like the number as his name, you know?
Which is something they assigned him before also.
Right.
So right now they're assigning him 12, making him like kind of miss being 6.
Yeah.
And when
like,
they assigned him 6, he's like,
is.
no,
Yeah.
I'm Jeff. So yeah, it's very cool. I think that ends up being one of the main themes that works for me is like, what do you define yourself by? What does your name mean? What does your appearance or like preference of certain things mean? Is that what defines you? And like, what is it about your moral and spiritual and physical self that is uniquely you, that cannot be recreated, cannot be copied, cloned, whatever he says in the first episode.
Yeah. I also noticed that he, instead of saying number 6, he says your number 6.
Your number 6. Like, it's not the name I use for myself. It's the name you guys use for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are the things. And then I liked that the food that they conditioned him to love is flapjacks.
What was that? Those pancakes?
I don't know. I'm just thinking about how do you get a spatula under that thing without flopping it around.
It was, that was very funny. I thought those were like, not chimichangas. Or like
they looked like fish or something.
Yes, exactly. Like a weird folded fish dish. I think my favorite part was just everything unraveling in the last couple minutes, where you're positive that Six knows what he's doing. He puts the photo of the wife in his pocket, and he's like, "I'm literally the smartest dude in the world," and just realizing, like, no, dude, they put the picture there. You're falling for a bigger plot than you even know about, because that's like what The Prisoner is. And every week, I'm like, I'm gonna know it. I'm gonna figure it out this time. I'm gonna like be ready for it. I'm gonna be burned out by how like repetitive this show is.
Yeah.
And every week, without fail, they like perform this alchemy that makes me believe it sincerely in my heart of hearts that like he figured it out. He outsmarted them. That's why them being imperfect works.
Yeah. Is
because it really like sells you on the idea that maybe he could do it. Maybe this time he'll finally get it. Like that episode where he thinks he's been shipped off to London in the crate, and you're like, wait, I guess he's here now, but like he's not going to be here for the whole show. And then it's like, no, he's not even here, dude. You've fallen for my trap again, number 6. So I think that's what we got. Let's take it to a brief musical break, unless there are some emails to read. Otherwise, we will be right back to discuss The General. Welcome back to Prisoner Chats. We are here again talking about The Prisoner. We are talking about specifically episode 6, The General. And John, I can't stop thinking about that car insurance commercial, like the General, like go to the General to save some time. I'm assuming that's what this episode is really about. But for now, what I understand about it, according to the history books, is that it was written by Louis Greifer, who was credited as Joshua Adam for some reason. I don't know what the detail is about that, but worth noting. It was directed by Peter Graham Scott. It aired November 3rd of 1967, and I'm curious if you could please tell me what happened in The General.
In this episode, an instant learning process becomes the village's latest fad, but number 6 is sure that number 2 is using it as a brainwashing tool. Alan, what do you think of The General? Could you tell me what happened? Because I kind of stopped paying attention.
For sure. It's not that dense of an episode plot-wise, but basically, number 6 is sitting at a cafe at the beginning of the episode with a bunch of students who have to go to the professor's course, which is a thing you do from your home where you turn on the TV and you watch it, and within a couple of seconds, you learn all of European history since Napoleon. That's like what the first lesson is. And they do multiple lessons, and it's like this new revolutionary way of learning that bypasses like students not being all on the same level. Road memorization, repetition, all that stuff is useless now because we have a better way.
Yeah.
He's curious, so he goes home and watches the broadcast, which I know you noted in your notes is like kind of ridiculous that he's like, this is definitely brainwashing, but what if I watched it? Like,
Yeah,
what?
that's the thing is, for somebody who's so shrewd and paranoid, he also always is like, yeah, okay, you can try your scheme on me.
Yeah.
That's always what he does.
I'll do it. Let's see what happens. And then it falls for it, and you're like, well, but you gotta find out somehow. You can't just like, no one's gonna tell you like, yeah, it actually works. Like, you have to find out by doing it, because
Yeah, but it looks like a brainwashing broadcast. Like, as soon as the thing shows up on the screen that's like, look at the screen, I feel like he would have been like, okay, and turning this off now.
it should be really easy, right?
Yeah.
That's in a couple of seconds, but they tell you they advertise it as you can learn a full university education in 3 minutes, which, I mean, we'll talk about it, but I think that's appealing, considering at at least like the U.S. college system and how expensive things are and how long and how much of it is based on, for some disciplines at least, rote memorization and repetition. But he later watches a talk show where he sees the professor's wife, or that's like right before the broadcast, and he watches the broadcast, and when he goes outside, he talks to people. He talks to number 2, who, interestingly enough, is the same number 2 as we saw in A, B, and C. He's back. It's the same guy. This is the episode that people suggest continuity-wise should come, I think, before A, B, and C. But that's neither here nor there. He suddenly realizes he knows everything about European history from Napoleon. All these different events, when wars happened, when different annexations happened, etc. And one day while he's walking down the beach, he finds the recorder that belongs to the professor, who says that speed learn is brainwashing and the general must be destroyed. So he buries the tape recorder and finds it later because it has the notes on it, and he wants that as evidence. He eventually visits the professor's home to try and find out what's going on, and he only sees the wife there, and he kind of like breaks in and finds a bunch of effigies of various students. There isn't a lot. I didn't really know what was the deal with that, other than, I don't know. I really don't know why there was all of these statues of students' heads, including himself, which that's probably the thumbnail of this episode, is Six looking at his own bust, being like, huh, good face he got there. He also finds a person it's like a life-sized effigy of the professor, but he's like in bed and he breaks it. He like smashes it with a hammer, which is really strange. But anyways, everyone's celebrating that their exams are going really well. There's a guy interviewing everybody about their exams, and here is where Six meets the man who has been staring at him the entire episode. We realize this is the new number 12. He says he wants to be Six's confidant, and he's going to help him turn off the speed learning indoctrination. He helps Six sneak into the education board by giving him a bunch of those like little chips that you use to break into to get into doors. And he plans to replace the video with some counter programming. Very cool moment. This is a lot of like charming Looney Tunesy stuff where he's like knocking out guards and sneaking into the projection room. Gets in there, but he bloodies his hand on the way in. When the people do a check before the broadcast to make sure that all the departments are functioning, he gives the verbal okay, but when they do a second check via video, they realize that his hand is bloody and that he must be number 6. And so he's interrogated. He doesn't give up number 12, even though we, the viewer, are like, I bet you number 12 isn't on this too. That's never made entirely clear, though. What is made clear is the identity of the general, which we learn is actually a huge supercomputer that's run by the professor and a single operator who just kind of unplugs and plugs things in. And like it's a 1950s short story, Six says, I'm going to ask the general one impossible question. Just let me ask you one question. Super stupid. The question is 3 letters. It's WHY ? Yeah,
I tuned out a little bit. So the supercomputer stuff, I was not hip to. Like, I didn't fully understand that connection. But I tuned back in at that moment where there's like people dead on the floor in a smoldering crater. And number 2 is like, what question did you ask? He was like, 3 letters. WHY. So dumb.
And like, in hindsight, the general being a computer is cute, smart. But this is another one of those moments where I'm like, did the prisoner do this first?
Yeah,
because I've seen this idea of like, what is the Wizard of Oz? Oh, the Wizard of Oz is not a man at all, but it's like a computer that it's an algorithm or whatever. That sort of thing.
The first time I encountered this like blow up the computer was an impossible question thing. It was in Time Warp Trio where they made a robot blow up by asking it, like, what's the square root of 0 or something like that.
Oh my God, Time
it has
Warp
that
Trio.
energy. Yeah, that's some good. We got a Chat's Time Warp Trio.
I think we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like the big twist. And clearly this episode has themes, but it's mostly just like another, it kind of feels rote almost.
Yeah, it feels, it certainly doesn't feel like it's reinventing the prisoner formula. I think we were talking in the last episode about, like, the reason I kind of tuned out of it is because so far in the first 5 episodes of The Prisoner, you have a formula, like number 2 has a scheme to try to get 6 to say stuff that like messes with his mind or messes with his sense of feeling stable. And then 6 figures it out and wins. And that's what every episode is. But every episode has managed to do that in a way where, like you were saying in the first half, you know, you start to feel like, oh my God, he can do it. Like he could actually, this is it. He's free. Or it does the thing where it just flips you on your head. What is going on? This is just like messing with my mind. And then this episode, it doesn't feel like it's reinventing in that way.
Mm-hmm.
It just sort of feels like, yeah, okay, there's like a creepy
Indoctrination
thing.
is bad.
And it feels almost like, I know that the show is kind of inspired by the Twilight Zone, but it feels almost Twilight Zone-y in a bad way, where you have Twilight Zone episodes where the moral of the story is so clear, and it does feel like this is one of those where it was like, okay, we know the social commentary that we want to have. And unlike the election episode where the social commentary was there and the episode did all the cool prisoner stuff, I feel like for this one, the social commentary is there and then the prisonery aspects of it are not as strong. And so you end up with this sort of like, here's my essay on why the education system robs people of their individuality and like makes them regurgitate information instead of being original thinkers. Cool. That's a valid thing to say, and it's a take on this theme of the prisoner, of like being your own person. But I just don't think it does it in a particularly deft way.
I think it tries to be subtle in like how it shows why the indoctrination is bad, because it doesn't say like, oh, they're clearly zombies. But what it is saying is like, this man with a microphone can literally walk up to people and be like, what happened in Russia in 1856? And they're like, well, blah, 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 blah. And they can all literally say the same words. And that is the show being like, this is the problem, is they can regurgitate, but they don't understand any of the stuff. Because I think at one point somebody, like number 2 asks 6 like a question, but he words it differently than he's used to having it in like repeated in his head. And 6 is like, oh, I don't actually know what that means. He asks him like, what is with this revolution of this year? And he's like, the revolution of this year happened on this day. And he's like, I didn't ask you when. I asked you what was it? Yeah. And he's like, I don't know, because like that's actually a major problem with the way we teach students. It's like rote memorization gives you like a facts that you can like barf onto a test, but isn't practical. But it just feels a little bit toothless. And the fact that the episode is like, yeah, that's really bad, and like students should have to learn their own stuff, but it doesn't offer any sort of alternative, which I don't even think that it has to. But it just feels like I also didn't need to get to this third act of like, who is the general, and this reveal that it's actually not a person but it's a computer is like, okay, well, yeah, we're regurgitating computer facts. I think that comes from more a 1960s fear of technology almost.
Yeah, that it does feel like a sort of Luddite episode in a little bit. Yeah.
Because you could totally see someone saying like, oh, the computer is just going to teach us now. Like, my kids are going to learn from their iPhone, and now they're not going to like know real things or how to talk to people because they're always on their phones. Like, it's just, it's the 1960s version of that, right? So, with the commentary being kind of less than exciting, we're left with an episode that has a lot of great aesthetic choices. I was like really obsessed with the whole set of like the broadcast center that Six breaks into. He's got a little top hat like everyone else does.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting note that I remembered. In the theme song, when the men like go up to his house and gas his room, they're also wearing top hats.
I noticed that too.
It's like, wait, hold on. I guess that just probably means they're from here. They're like from the village. But I was like, wait, are the top hat men's important? Hold on. I'm like, no,
man, that's funny.
Right? And once he's in there and like the little passcodes to get in are like these little chips that you hand to a little cartoon hand that like mechanically whirs up to you, picks up the chip and then eats it. Like blah, 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 blah. Is very fun. It like reminded me of the Teletubbies vacuum for some reason.
Oh yeah.
This just like autonomous thing that like does its job.
Man, I could eat some tubby custard right now, right?
I could live on tubby custard. That's what they
called
me.
Did.
That's what they called me in high school. Tubby custard.
Tubby custard.
And you knew me then, so you were doing it too, man. It's in my yearbook.
I started it.
Yeah.
I started it, yeah.
I didn't know until way later that you started it, and I felt really betrayed, but I'm over it now.
I wish we'd caught that on tape. That would have been a very special episode of Chats, huh?
Where you first called me Tubby Custard?
No, where I
realized?
Confess to you, yeah.
Yeah. I have very few notes on this episode. This is unfortunate.
Yeah, it just, it sort of, this episode takes a Zamboni to the rough ice patch that is the prisoner and just like smooths it out. And I don't know, I guess Zambonis do good things, so it's not a perfect metaphor. But
to smooth out something that is otherwise complex and like,
yeah, and like rough and confusing. And now you can just kind of skate freely on the ice this episode and be like, I know exactly where I'm going. I'm not going to trip. And that's just not the experience I want to have when I'm watching The Prisoner.
Right. I'd rather be a little bit confused than extremely comfortable in an episode of The Prisoner. Like the politics one was a little bit confusing to me, but I enjoy that feeling of confusion and disorientation. But this is just like, it's not real. And the social brainwashing is bad. And we know that. And that's kind of it. I mean, there's like little charming moments. Again, everything in the facility is really fun. You made that point about number 6 watching the broadcast being not very smart. I'm actually looking at your notes here. Let me scroll up to my notes. Ooh, I wrote all these things here. I think I was asking why did the professor leave the recorder out, and that was presumably so that it could be found.
Yeah. So can you clarify for me who like the good guys and the bad guys are here? Because I was a little confused.
Well, I think the professor. Well, that's a good question, right? Because the professor
like
is
who's
the
on
one
whose side? Because number 12 is like hanging out with number 2, but also maybe isn't.
When in doubt, I always assume everybody's against number 6. Like it's usually just that simple.
Yeah.
So number 12 is probably at the end of the day working for number 2, I think. Because if he's not, it's like, so what? Like, is he going to come back next week? Probably not. It's very unlikely that this 12 comes back. And then is the professor trying to do things? Why does the wife have an effigy of him in her room? Why do they have statues? There's a lot of like unanswerable questions in this one. But I think in terms of like who the good guys are, it's basically number 6, and through the help of number 12 is able to almost get what he wants. Something I also wish I got to see was like what his counter programming would have been.
Yeah.
If it's just like a sweaty number 6 in his like undershirt, like coming out of the shower being like, it's all lies. Everyone, you're free. I love you're all people. You have personality. European history's dumb anyways. If it's all just like imperialism, just go, leave. I'm commanding you to leave.
Question everything. Bush did 9/11.
Yeah. What is it? Jet fuel can't melt steel beams.
Uh-huh.
Like whoa, he's just like dropping conspiracies.
Yeah, there's something about individualism that has that kind of anti-intellectual edge to it. It has both an intellectual and an anti-intellectual edge, where like the bad, this sort of suspicious figure is the professor, and this whole episode is kind of casting doubt on like the idea of learning and its value and stuff. And I think that's dangerous. Like I'm kind of resentful of that. Obviously,
Not
that's
only
coming
as an
from
educator yourself, but as a person who wants to be open-minded and stuff.
yeah, and like I think about like when I was working at the last school I was at, the literature teacher there was talking to me about how he doesn't love transcendentalism. And part of transcendentalism that I hadn't thought about before, because I really like it, like it's all about self-actualization and individualism and your own connection with the world and self-reliance and stuff. But also part of transcendentalism in the American context is like Ralph Waldo Emerson saying, forget about the old masters of Europe, like whatever, we'll make our own art, we'll make our own science, we'll figure it out. And that can be pernicious, the complete rejection of an established knowledge base. I think taking that to be dogmatic is a problem, because people accumulate knowledge and discover stuff and want to share it. And it's true that when it gets to the point of it being like rote facts for the sake of rote facts, that's damaging and that erases people's individuality. But I don't think that means that like the whole concept of higher education is bunk,
Right. That's a good point.
Go ahead.
Well, just think to pivot also to the episode. Something I was just thinking about is like one of the reasons I think this episode doesn't ring as true and as like powerful as a lot of the other ones is that the plan of number 2 here has actually nothing to do with number 6. Like, he's not trying to get him to do something or be something or say something.
Right.
It's entirely like, oh, they have ulterior motives that don't have to do with, like, he could have just not involved himself and they would have succeeded perfectly. Which brings Ian into question of, like, then what are their ultimate goals? Like, why are we brainwashing the kids?
Yeah, who are these people on the island? Right.
Mm-hmm. Just something I was thinking about, but sorry to derail.
No, that's an important point too. Yeah, like what does this say about 6? Because also the idea of like education in that sense doesn't really relate to his character or his individuality. I mean, he says, and I almost turned off my TV when he said this. He said, "History's not my subject." It's like, okay, buddy, well,
right,
goodbye. But like there isn't really a part of his character that's about being a learned guy. I think there are lots of other things about his character that are about like just the more basic fundamentals of like being yourself and like having your own ideas or your own dreams, your own memories, your own habits, right? Things that are more universal. And Schizoid Man, I think, addressed that a lot better. That like the things that he's feeling alienated from are like his handedness and his talents and his preferences, and those things I think are those tangibles of identity. I've found that more compelling because I don't understand 6 as a character, like what his kind of ground state opinion on the education system is. And I don't think that I need to know. Whereas in the politics episode, I think because he was like a government operative, and because he's like a charismatic guy who has the power to like woo people and gain power, that I think felt closer to him. But also in that episode when he's like, this is a fake democracy, it's like, what do you care about democracy?
Yeah.
You're a little spy man. So yeah, when this show tries to go directly for the social commentary stuff, it reaches a little bit past like what feels natural to it.
Yeah, and it's ultimately it's a show written by some older guys in the 60s, being like technology is bad, and that's like one of the reasons that this episode just falls really flat is I can't relate to that anymore. I understand the ills of technology, and I understand also that there are beautiful things that can come from it. And yeah, a lot of the time the show is super shrewd and like knows what the modern anxieties are, but you know, we're talking to each other through computers and through technology. This show doesn't exist. Like a lot of things are built off of like collective efforts and learning together through technology.
Right. This is like a pre-internet understanding of how the computer would impact learning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They didn't know about all these Zoom calls where the background is going to be like Bob from Animal Crossing dabbing or whatever. Like, come on. It's a different time we live in, but yeah,
it is interesting to think about in the context of the 60s and university education. Part of the vibe of number 12 reminded me of this speech from the Berkeley Free Speech Movement from the student named Mario Savio, and I linked it in our notes, where because the guy calls himself, he said, Six is like, who are you? And he says, I'm a cog in the machine. And there's this speech from Mario Savio where he's talking to the other students in Berkeley and talking about how like sometimes you have to throw yourself on the gears of the machine to like stop its operating. And so there's this, it is definitely of the 60s, this sort of vaunted like anti-establishment ire towards universities, which I think is also a part of why this doesn't ring as true for me. Because I think there are aspects of that were true of my college experience, like people wanting my university to divest from fossil fuels and things like that. But this general sort of like, you're brainwashing us, or like you're conditioning us to have this certain life, and like the machine is odious and we're going to throw ourselves on the gears for better or worse. That's not really part of our generation anymore, you know? And I think it was really a battleground of the 60s. So maybe this episode, at the time that it aired, people were watching it and being like, oh yeah, oh, the prisoner's speaking my language. Because we also, that quote I brought up in that first episode where Patrick McGowan was hoping he would like create a protest among these French college students or something. You know, I guess the context, I think out of context, this episode doesn't really play very well.
Right. Student protests were happening a lot in the 60s, though. And that's why it's like, I kind of wish this was almost more about talking to students and being like, don't you guys know you need to be your own people or something like that?
Yeah.
And not this like bungling, like stealth video game thing at the end where he's like, got to knock out the guards and get into, oh my God, it's a computer.
Yeah.
Confronted with that stuff.
Yeah. It just gets like cheesy, actiony in a way that I was not watching that intently.
So, John, we're left with this episode that I think we both agreed is one of the weaker, if not the weakest episode we've seen so far. Is that okay to say?
I think it's my least favorite so far, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we can hope and be optimistic that we'll get something better next week. So, would you like to tell me what we're watching next time on PrisonerChatz, unless you have any stray notes about this one?
Let's see. I like that it was like a 3-part history course. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
It appealed to me.
Yeah.
But I think just because I miss taking college classes.
Womp.
Yeah, he said history is not my subject.
Which offended you personally.
Yeah. I wrote that I got a little blood this is gross. I got this from an Office episode I watched yesterday where they used this phrase. But there was a little blood rushing to my penis when number 6 and number 2 were reciting the history lecture at the same time, and the music was swelling underneath.
Yeah, there is really good music in this one. I think that's another element I liked.
And then I like when 6 was in the house, the professor's house, and he's looking at all the busts. And number 2 was like, are you playing truant? And 6 was like, I was just doing a little homework. Cute. It's cute line. But that's
a well-written program.
Yeah. Are you ready to know what we're watching next week?
I'm so ready.
Next week, we're watching the next 2 episodes of The Prisoner. We are watching episodes 7 and 8. Episode 7 is Many Happy Returns. Number 6 wakes up to find the village totally deserted.
That sounds dope.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Episode 8 is Dance of the Dead. Number 6 comes across a body that has washed ashore with a radio. After sending the body back out to sea, he tries to use the radio to get rescued.
Oh.
Okay.
He's like Gulliver from Animal Crossing.
Okay.
That one sounds like it could be a little higher concept, which is always has potential.
Yeah, this feels like we're about to enter kind of a lull week.
Yeah, maybe. Who can say? Truly, who can say?
Sure.
Cool. Well, are you ready to take it to the plug zone, mister?
I am.
If you would like to email us questions, comments, concerns, or recommendations, please do so by heading over to chatspod@gmail.com. That is CHATZPOD@gmail.com. You can also tweet at us at chatspod, where we post the new episodes as they come out on Sundays, as well as like tweet. We actually did a poll on this episode, or on episode 2's thumbnail rather, which came out a week ago. And so you can like vote on polls and stuff. Polls, which is pretty cool.
Bills.
You can rate us on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice if you like the show, or if you have things to say about the show. Critical feedback is welcome. And if you don't mind, please consider checking out our Patreon, patreon.com/chatspod, where we have all sorts of exciting and cool bonus content for you. At just $3 a month, you get all of it. We have our patrons vote at the end of 1 month on what we're going to do next month. And yeah, you get to check out. We do 3 things a month over there, and you can listen to all of it. You get a big backlog as well. We got movie commentaries, we got hangout episodes, we got listener requested episodes, we got pilot chats where we watch TV pilots. Maybe there's a show that you want us to cover that we've already done a pilot of, and you can check that all out at patreon.com/chatspod. Special shout-outs as well this week to the Prisoner subreddit, reddit.com/r/theprisoner. The moderators over there are starting a rewatch right around the time we started this podcast. And you should all go over there and leave comments and talk about the show, because they are also linking the relevant chats episodes every week.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about the podcast in a Reddit format like we used to way back in the day with Farscape, you can do that over at reddit.com/r/theprisoner. Now, Magellan, do you have a chatsum for this week, my son?
That's a great question. And the answer
will be revealed shortly.
The answer is I don't. Okay. So I think my chatsum is just like, hey, go out there and make mistakes. Make some mistakes.
Make mistakes.
Because today I was coming back from the grocery store, and I had a drawstring backpack on my back that was too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And it snapped. The drawstring snapped, fell on the sidewalk. My milk burst. Milk poured on everything on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had a great time. I actually didn't mind. I didn't cry over the spilled milk.
Oh!
Yeah, so just go out there and,
go spill some milk.
Make some mistakes and take a picture. I took a picture, too.
Make mistake. Can I? Oh, wait, I want to see this picture. Just for me, though, not for the pod.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Thank you. I have a chat for this week.
Yeah, what do you got?
It's my new favorite YouTube channel. I'm watching a lot of YouTube right now, obviously, and I've been trying to cook and bake more. I've obviously been getting into cooking and baking, especially in the last couple of years. If people who've been listening to chats know, but this channel has been really great for me learning new stuff. It's called Nino's Home. And basically, it's hosted by this young Vietnamese gentleman named Nino. And the idea is he does these cooking recipes, which are really beautifully shot. It's stuff like, different ice creams, truffle cakes, pineapple cake, different type of cookie recipes. He actually did a really great recipe for blended coffee, which I've been using a lot. It's a really fun one. And it's kind of like you can just watch it for the recipe and for the ASMR of it, because it's filmed with really great audio and stuff of him just, he's got all these really cute tools. He's got cats on everything and little figures all around his kitchen. Cute. It's very relaxing and chill to watch. But he also has a really cute cat that follows him around. And a couple hours after he posts the episode, he also posts these captions, which are in English, which are in translated English. And I can best describe them as he's roasting you, but also in a very loving, borderline flirtatious way. Because he's talking about oh, this one, you could use more sugar, but you shouldn't because you're fat and you don't need any more. Anyways, just kidding. I love you. I'm fat too. And it's Nino, excuse me. And there's just something, he's super charming and funny. And you're like learning about him as you watch all of them. It's the usual like parasocial YouTube thing where like you watch his whole backlog and you're like, oh, his cat got sick for a couple weeks. Oh my God, I hope he's okay. And then the cat comes back and then he gets the dog and the cat like each other. So everything around all these fantastic baking recipes is also really charming, and I highly recommend people check him out. That's Nino's Home on YouTube.
I just realized that I do have a Chatsum.
Oh boy.
I totally forgot about this.
Oh,
there's a new TV rewatch podcast that I started listening to this
snap.
week.
Yes.
That is very, very delightful. It's a Scrubs rewatch podcast hosted by Zach Braff and Donald Faison called Fake Doctors, Real Friends. They have one episode out right now, and it's so cute. They talk about their auditions, and they are actually best friends. It's really, really special.
There's a part in the first episode where they're doing the credits, and they're just like, I love you, man. I love you. I love you. And you're like, it just feels very earnest. They love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always fun to listen to another TV rewatch podcast, especially one as like well produced as that one. And just be like, what do they talk about? But yeah, lots of good like actor insight, and they said they're gonna get like guests on from the show, like the creative staff. So yeah, Fake Doctors, Real Friends. I co-sign that Chatsum for you. Cool. Well, that, dear listener, is going to do it. Thank you as always to Magellan for being the rock to my hard place, and thank you, dear listener, for listening to this episode of PrisonerChatz. Be seeing you. Be seeing you. We'll be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Be seeing it.